All right, another episode of the More to It podcast presented by Hell Varsity Magazine, hellvarsity.com, and I am pleasured to be joined by, well, I like to call him the voice of all sports, but since there's no sports going on right now, he couldn't tell me no that he couldn't hop on this podcast today. Mr. Kevin Kugler is joining us today on the More to It podcast. How are you, Kevin?
I've lost all my excuses, Jay. I mean, I can't skip out on any of this stuff anymore because I've got a game. I could say I have a game, but nobody will believe me because there are no games right now.
Yeah, no kidding. You are one of the most busiest people alive. You maybe are at home, maybe 1 or 2 days out of the week. It seems like. What has a guy like you kept being able to do to keep yourself busy during this goofy, crazy time of ours?
Yeah, it's been a big adjustment, and you're going 100 miles an hour when it hits with basketball every night and moving into the NCAA tournament and conference tournaments and all this other stuff, and to go from 100 to 0 that's not my norm. I usually have a taper down where college baseball kind of brings me down, and I go through the college baseball season not as busy, and then we get into the College World Series. You have those crazy 10 days of the series, and then it's over for a month, and you ramp back up for football season. And now I've been off since March, and just kind of you do what you can to keep yourself busy. There's a lot of projects that we've tried to do around the house and gotten some stuff done, spend time with the family. That's something I don't always get to do. I've watched a lot of old games, mine and others, just trying to figure out ways to get better during this process so that when I come back, and knock on wood, that's August 14th for the first season game for the Houston Texans. Hopefully by August 14th, we are we know we're doing sports and we know we're playing football and we're back on games again. And that's the thing we're looking forward to now. As of right now, there's nothing until August 14th. So everything I've been doing these last almost 3 months now, I get to keep doing for another 2 months before we get back to work.
Right. Take me back. So where were you at when everything? Were you in at the Big Ten basketball tournament, calling those games when this happened?
I was in Indianapolis. I had finished up the weekend before. I'd had Seton Hall and Creighton for the Big East regular season championship on Saturday. Then I went and did Iowa, Illinois on Sunday on BTN. Came home on that Monday, March the 9th, and you're starting to wonder, okay, what's happening? This Corona thing was starting to get a lot of play, and then it became a national emergency, and we were still on, we were still going. So I got on a plane on Wednesday afternoon, and I flew to Indianapolis, and I went actually to the games on Wednesday night, the Nebraska and Indiana game, and full house, a lot of fans. But that was the last, before those games really got going, it was announced that there weren't going to be fans the rest of the time for the Big Ten tournament. So I thought, well, I really want to go over, and this may be the last sporting event with fans for a while, which is my thought then, and obviously it turned out to be the case. And so I went over and watched some of the games, saw Coach Hoiberg going through his struggles on the sidelines with his health. And so I left early, not because of that, just because I thought, all right, I'm going to go back, get ready. It's going to be a different day, no fans. We're going to figure this thing out. So I went back, got up the next morning and watched the news, and, everything was starting to ramp up COVID-wise, but everything was still on, no fans. And I was sitting on my bed going through my notes and getting stuff jotted down for the basketball games that night, and was watching BTN, and Dave Revson in the studio told me that the Big Ten tournament had been canceled. I found out about 15 minutes later the SEC tournament, where I was supposed to go that weekend for Westwood One Radio, had also been canceled. And so I booked a flight home and flew home that Thursday night, March the 12th. And other than the next weekend when we had to go and basically evacuate my daughter from Arizona State, where she was a sophomore, finishing up her sophomore year, I've been home ever since. So it's been a very different couple of months from what I normally have. After I was going to NCAA tournament after that, I was doing the Masters. I'd gotten my full baseball schedule, so I was ready for college baseball, and I was doing a couple of spring games. It was supposed to be in Ann Arbor for the spring games, supposed to be at Piscataway for the debut of the Greg Schiano era Part 2, and instead I got nothing. May should have been a very busy month for college baseball, and it was not at all, and June the same, and I am I'll go ahead and predict now that by the time I reach the end of June, I won't have called the college baseball then either.
Hey, were you supposed to do the Olympics?
Yep, we're supposed to leave late July. Want to say we hadn't booked flights yet, but the expectation was July 19. I was going to be flying to Tokyo and would have been at the Olympics until August the 9th or 10th. So it would have been, I would have had basically this year was supposed to be a real short summer break for me. I was only going to have about 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks of summer before I got back to work again. And as it turns out, I'm now having, like so many of us, an endless summer right now, where it's just every day is kind of the same day over and over again.
Yeah, I know. It feels like there's about a 3-week stretch here. So it feels like Saturday, and I started noticing a lot more liquor store debits on my bank account from stopping through, buying might get a little more beer here, a little more tequila here. It's like, holy smokes, I gotta get back to some sort of routine because I'm gonna have to put myself into AA meetings here before I know it.
Well, and you know how it goes too, because you're sitting around and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to have a beer on the porch, or I'm going to sit on the deck and have a beer. And then you realize normally that was something you might do on a Saturday afternoon. And here you are on a Tuesday afternoon sitting on your deck drinking a beer at 2 in the afternoon. You're thinking, you're mowing your yard at all different times. Like, yeah, you know what? Time for a post-mow beer. And you're like, I'm having a post-mow beer on a Wednesday afternoon at 1. What is happening here? And I think all of us during this time have been like, I don't know what day it is. There's beer in the fridge. I guess I'll drink it.
Yeah, I know. It's been, oh man, it's been a great. What? We're kind of chatting before we came on, and now it looks like sports are. Let's cross our fingers here, and it looks like we're kind of downturn. Sports are coming back. How confident were you maybe April, May that we would potentially have football this fall? And that's kind of was the main important question for everyone getting over this hurdle of the pandemic was football coming back.
I can say this to you because you've been on both sides of this thing, and I think both of us know that the NFL is a different monster than college football. I was always pretty confident the NFL was going to play because guys like you who've been in the league and have had a chance to be in the league, you're going to sign a waiver to play football, and you're going to take your chance because you know the window is very short. And whether you're Jay Moore or Tom Brady, you're going to play that game because you don't know how many more years of that game you have. So I was always pretty confident the NFL would figure out a way to play. If you'd have asked me in April, I would have been very skeptical about college football. I'm very happy with the path we're on right now. I hope we can stay on this path because I feel like everybody's got a pretty good plan in place right now to manage a college football season of some sort. And I think we'll get most, if not all of it in. And I do think there'll be a situation where we have some amount of fans in the stands. I'm not going to sit here and say 100% of the fans are going to be packing into Memorial Stadium. I don't know that. We're fortunate we have several months still to get this health crisis in even a more manageable state. But I would not have given you much in April for a college football season as far as odds. I feel much, much better as we sit here in June about the chances of us playing college football in 3 months.
Yeah, what would a guy like you have done, let's say, if they would have postponed the season until, they're talking about like late winter, early spring, to where you're calling basketball games 3 nights a week and you're trying to get around to call these football games? I mean, what the hell would Kevin Kugler done in that situation?
I tried to clone myself if I could. I mean, I like, there are a lot of businesses where a season is a money making season for you. Football's a money making season for us broadcasters. So we needed to go, and that was the thing I was real concerned about. For a good long time, the thought was they were going to push the season and maybe push it into early spring next year. And I think the prevailing theory now is let's get it in as fast as we can in case a second wave comes in the winter time. So I can't imagine that we'd start it, in mid-August. That seems too early, but just based on getting everybody ready. But I do think there's going to be a bigger push and a bigger emphasis to start on time so that you can get as much done September, October, and early November when the weather through most of the country is still good and where we're able to still be outside and not necessarily hemmed up inside where perhaps you can get COVID a little more easier inside than you can outside. Again, I'm not an epidemiologist, but that's the prevailing thought that outdoors is better than indoors. And if you're at a college football game, you want to be able to do as much of that as you can when it's decent weather.
Right. So we know, I mean, golf's coming back this week. NBA's made a proposal to come back. Hockey's made a proposal to come back. We know that college football, NFL football's coming back. We know you are a very passionate Chicago Cubs fan and you love your baseball. What in the hell are these guys going to do?
I'm so frustrated with this, Jay. I mean, this is the one thing I said to my wife when it was very clear this was going to be something more than just, because all of us, I think, at the beginning of this thought, all right, we'll do this for a week or two, and then maybe things will start to turn around. Probably, obviously, very naive thinking on my part if I was thinking that. But, you're trying to be optimistic, like, I've never seen anything like this before. Hopefully it doesn't last long. Well, obviously it's lasted long. But I told her at the beginning of this thing, I said, look, if I can be sitting on my deck, beer in my hand, listening to the Cubs game on July 4th, like every other summer 4th of July, I'm going to feel pretty good. I'm not going to be doing that. And that is disheartening. It's disappointing. Baseball has missed an absolute golden opportunity. There is, of all the sports, PGA Tour, NASCAR, and baseball are the three most socially distant sports there are. I mean, you're not tackling people in baseball. They've taken the contact out of the game over the last several years. So you are now essentially just fighting over money and arguing over how little or how much to get paid or to pay. And whether you're on an owner's side or a player's side, I'm on the side of the fan. The fan wanted to watch and listen to baseball in the summertime. It's the song of summer, and it's not there anymore. And it's not going to be there. And by the time, if they are, and who knows, by the time people hear us conversating about this, Jay, maybe they'll come to some sort of an agreement. But as we sit here and talk today, they don't appear to be very close to an agreement, and a lot of talk is about a 48 or 50 game season, which starts in mid to late July. I got news for baseball. You start a very small season in mid to late July. Preseason NFL starts on August 13th and August 14th. Mm-hmm. People are going to be watching football by that point. And baseball and its attempt at a little mini season isn't going to fly for people. There will be hardcore fans that watch, and there will be sports fans who pay attention. But it's going to be really hard to get into it as a baseball fan. Your Cy Young Award winner is going to go 6-1 this year. Last year, the Nationals, after a 50 game, for 19-31. They won the World Series. They wouldn't make the playoffs in a season like this. So it's very frustrating. Baseball should have been ready to roll by early June in this thing. They should have spent the entirety of April and May figuring this out, realizing you weren't going to have fans in the stands right away, but be back ready to go June 1 or June 15, and you could have captured a starving sports fan base that would have given you complete total attention for a month and a half, and instead you've squandered and have done, to me, irreparable damage to the game.
Yeah. See, I did a podcast with Alex Gordon just 2-3 weeks ago, and he is the MLBPA, the Players Association rep for the Royals. And I'm like, what's the plan? He's like, 2-week spring training, early June, first game starting July 1. He seems super confident in that. He's like, I've been on, we're having the conversations. People are allowed on board in that. And I'm like, oh, great. Baseball's going to happen July 1. And that's far from the truth. And it's just wild that they can't come together and just get their minds made up that, hey, let's get some games going. And I know it's frustrating me, you, and everyone else that loves watching baseball in the summer.
Well, and now you've missed this chance of your baseball. You're trying to grow a sport that has been thought of for years to have a problem with younger fans. How do you get younger fans interested in a game and in a season that's a long novel? Football is such a good sport for right now because you and I have to spend one day on it if we want it. We can spend one Saturday on a college football game, and then we can kind of check out for a few days and do our lives. And then we jump back in for this one event. Baseball is like reading a novel. You start at the beginning, you follow it through the year, you see it through. You're not going to have that opportunity to do this now. They've really missed the chance to introduce young people again to this game, and they're going to squander it. They're going to squander it because neither side trusts the other side, and neither side believes the other side. Like so many things, it's become a big argument, and two sides are very obstinate, and who's gonna end up hurt the most? Person who wants to watch or listen to a baseball game. I feel bad for fans of the sport, and I consider myself to be one of them.
Yeah, hopefully they get it figured out sooner or later. But I don't see that will that's going to happen anytime soon. No, let's take me back. How does Kevin Kugler take me back to your story? I think people hear you, see you, BTN, Westwood One, even on Fox for some NFL coverage and many other the Masters coverage. You name it. You go through the gamut. You're everywhere. How does Kevin Kugler get to where he is today? And I remember you saying, I think one of the times after we got done talking, after we shot Big O Wrap Up, that there was a time frame where you didn't know if you were going to keep doing this. And just take me through that your progression to get where you are and some of the hurdles you had to overcome to become the voice of sports.
It's not a story that's all that different from so many other people doing their whatever it is they do for a living. It just happened to be in a sportscasting field for me. But I went to the University of Nebraska, graduated from the College of Journalism, and went 7 months looking for a job. Once I got out of college, took me a while to get any traction at all. Worked in York, Nebraska for a year at an AM/FM radio station out there calling York Duke football, York Dukes basketball, York Dukes baseball, York Dukes soccer. Had a great time with that. Then went to Omaha, worked in the CBA for the Omaha Racers, called their games. They folded. Kicked around doing some freelance stuff for a few years and got to a point where I wasn't sure I was going to continue to do the broadcasting thing. In fact, I had taken a trip to the West Nebraska All-Star game, and I'd gone out with Bill Dolman. Bill was doing the play-by-play, and I was doing the sidelines for this game on NET, and we had gone out a day or two early to play some golf on the way out. And because there's just so many great – I mean, this is an aside, but there's so many great courses to just stop and play if you're making a trip out from the east part of the state to the west part of the state.
Oh, yeah.
Just an aside, and you just stop and you find a 9 somewhere and you play. It was great, a great time. But it was one of those moments where I went on this trip, and I still remember the conversations I had with Bill about I don't know that I can keep doing this. My wife was just finishing up law school, and I was cobbling together jobs here and there and making nothing, basically doing it. And, at some point I'm like, maybe I have to grow up and get a real job, and I don't know what that's going to be. And so, but on that trip, I got a phone call from Gary Anderson, who was the sports information director at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and they were looking for a football announcer and a basketball announcer. And he'd left a message. This was back in the old answering machine days, and he had left a message on the answering machine. And I talked to my wife that night. She said, "You got this phone call on the machine from Gary Anderson." And that phone call was really what kept me in broadcasting, because I was going to try to figure out what I was going to do after that. And after that call, I decided, all right, that's a great sign. I'm supposed to stay in this. Went and talked to Gary. He offered me the chance to do their games. And then that led to a sports talk show in Omaha that I started with Bob Bruce, called Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Did that for 12 years. That led to me doing College World Series. That led to me getting involved with Westwood One, which then led to me doing more TV stuff. And I mean, it just sort of built upon itself from there. But, it's been a while since that golf trip out west, but that was really the moment where it became this pivotal moment. Do I stay in this or do I get out? And that phone call is really what kept me in the business to begin with. And then, I was told once by Ian Eagle that there are going to be a lot, if you're successful, there are a lot of people that will take credit for your career for being successful. And I have a lot of people who can and should take some credit for good things that have happened in my career, whether it's Gary Anderson at UNO or Neil Nelkin, who was my boss for so many years at the radio stations in Omaha, or Howard Deneroff at Westwood One, who helped propel me and gave me the chance to be on the national stage on radio, and Mark Halsey at Big Ten Network, who gave me the chance to do more TV work at BTN. I mean, there's just a lot of people that I owe a great deal of gratitude to. And I've had an inordinate amount of time, Jay, to think about all this stuff in the last few months. And so it's I'm glad you brought that up, because it's kind of fun to get the chance to publicly say thanks to some of those folks who have really been a big part of me, being able to stay in this business, a business I love and a career I love, but it was very close at one point to not being anything I was going to do anymore.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, we got to go talk about Big O Wrap Up for a minute. I mean, I had the absolute joy of sitting next to you for about a season and a half doing that show until you stepped away, and it led to our good bud Michael Severe getting the lead of the show. But that show, you were on it for 20 years, correct?
Yep.
Doing that. Talk just that show a little bit, because I have just been, it's been an absolute, joy for me to do it every Tuesday night. And, I get recognized not for playing football, but for the guy that's on Big O Wrap Up. Now I go out in public. So it's been fun. And it was great to learn from you and how to be professional more in the media business and being on TV. And but just talk about you being on that show for 20 years and how that show kind of evolved into what it is today.
Yeah, and leaving that was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, and it was probably a decision that I delayed longer than I probably should have, just from a schedule standpoint, only because I love doing it and I love being with people at NET. You talk about people who gave me an opportunity. It was really NET that gave me my first professional broadcast job. The first paid job I ever had was sidelines at the 1994 Nebraska Shrine Bowl. I mean, that was the very first gig I ever got paid for. And I can tell you right now, I got paid $250 to do the sidelines of the Nebraska Shrine Bowl in 1994. And I was still a college senior, didn't graduate till December of 94. And I can still remember getting that check thinking, this is the greatest thing. I got $250 to go to a football game. This is I never want this job to end. And Jim Carmichael, who passed away in 2014, actually in the offices at NET, was the longtime producer of Big Red Wrap Up and was the guy that gave me my first chance at NET. When I talk about the people that are still with us that have made a big impact in my life, Jim was a great friend, was almost a brother to me in a lot of ways, in some ways a father figure in some ways, and I miss him every single day. I was in Sochi, Russia, for the Olympics when he passed away, and I didn't get to go to his funeral, and I miss him every day. He gave me that chance, and he and I worked together on that show for so long. For 20 years, I did that show, and for about 15 of those years, Jim was producing it. Mm-hmm. And he and I spent a lot of nights together and a lot of phone calls together and a lot of conversations and a lot of meals. And he was such a big supporter to me and to that show, and he made me a lot better over the course of the time doing that show. But that was a big deal for me, and still is. That show, as big an impact as it's had on this state over the years, and as many eyes are on that show every week, that was a really big deal. When Bill left, Bill Dolman was the host before me. He moved away to Houston, and they elevated me to the top spot, if you will, at NET as far as hosting that show and doing other sporting events. And that was a really big break for me to have that statewide platform to talk Husker football every week. And I can't tell you how much better it made me, how much I grew during my time hosting that show. I was a very different host last year when I stepped away than I was prior to my time as a host. And I changed a lot over those 20 years doing that. But man, it was a really special show for me, and I miss it. I mean, I missed not being around it last year. I thought you and Michael were a good team. You guys really seemed, I'll throw Sean a bone, I guess, but I mean, I thought you guys worked really well, and I knew you would. Mike, there are a few people in this state that are more passionate about the game of football than Michael Severe. And look, Michael and I were partners for 8 years on the radio. He is one of my dearest friends, and I would do anything for him, and he knows that. And he, as a host of that show, is a fantastic fit. And I was so happy that he was the guy who got to sit in that chair, and I was also happy for you that he was going to be the guy sitting in that chair, because I knew he was going to be really good for you as well. He's just so football savvy, but he's also not afraid to be opinionated and throw stuff out there. So I was very excited for NET that Michael was the guy that stepped into that role, because I knew how good he'd be. But that's a special show, Jay, and you know that. Now that you've been a part of that, you know the reach that show has, and you know what it means to the state of Nebraska. And it was an honor for me to be a part of it for 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, longest running sports show in the state of Nebraska, correct?
Yeah, correct.
1956, is that correct?
Yep.
Goes that far back?
Late 50s is when that got rolling, and it's had different incarnations over the years. Big Red Play-by-Play, and all the different show names that it's had, and Husker football, and and it obviously has had different formats with coaches and players on watching game film, and the rules have changed in certain areas as to how many highlights we can show and how we show them. But we show now streaming stuff. I say we as if I'm still doing this, but it is. It's been fun to see that show change over the years. And you know this. I mean, you're a Nebraska guy. You grew up here. You played here. There is very little that bonds this state together more than Nebraska football. There aren't a lot of states like that left in the United States of America, where one thing, regardless of whether you are one side of the political aisle or the other, you're one belief system or the other, you're this, you're that, it doesn't really matter. Football in this state is a connector for everybody, and I will believe that until I draw my last breath on this earth, that this state has something that not every state has, because you only have the one Division I football team. There's a lot of states that have competing interests for Division I football. That's not the case in Nebraska.
Yeah, it's been an absolute. I mean, it worked out. Blake Lawrence did a great job, and obviously he had to move. And I'm just glad Gavin. It's hard to say glad and Gavin after back to back. Glad that Gavin gave me an opportunity. It's worked out. It's been an absolute joy breaking down the film. I'm just glad the football's gonna be back. We're gonna have a show to do, and hopefully this fall.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So now we got to. You've already mentioned golf. The great golf course you got to play going west, and I am as big a golf nerd. Just as passionate, if not more passionate about golf than the game of football. And you get to go to Augusta National every year. It sits on around 12 green, 8 green. You get to call the action there for 4 days for Westwood One. You got to, just for me, I don't know, people probably want to hear more football talk, but you just for my my information here and to tickle me a little bit, just take me through. You get to step on the grounds of Augusta National for 1 week in April now, this week, or I guess what are you going to do in November with football?
It's a really good question. That's to be determined yet. I fear I'm going to miss it, because I normally have double dip football both Saturday and Sundays, and this may be my first missed Masters. This may be, and between you and me and everybody listening to this, Jay, that's going to be about the hardest thing. That assuming that everything is still going football wise, that may be the hardest loss. That and the NCAA tournament for this entire pandemic for me. I mean, I adore the Masters. Augusta National is one of this country's most sacred sports venues, and the fact that I didn't get to be there in April this year, that stung, man. I mean, that not calling the Final Four hurt a lot, and that just crushed me, because I have enjoyed that so much since 2008 to get the chance to do that. But I've been to every Masters since 2009. I mean, I have spent a lot of weeks at Augusta National, and I do not say that lightly, because I know there are a lot of people who would cut off their right arm to spend a week at Augusta National.
I'm raising my hand, this guy.
And I've spent basically 3 months of my life on that golf course. So I understand that's like Mecca for people. I mean, that's the spot. And I don't take that for granted, but it is one of the. I always tell this story for people who ask about Augusta National, because I always remember this in my first year. We are fortunate; we get a couple of golf carts as part of the radio broadcast to motor around the course and drop off people at different holes and make sure the equipment's working, all that stuff. And on the Wednesday before the Masters begins, we go out and we test all of our equipment at each hole back to New York to make sure everything's working. And we do it after the par 3 gets over. So par 3 ends, and this is my first year. So now I work at Amen Corner. Then I worked at 8. So I would go to 8 green, and you can see 1 green from where you are at 8. And so I'm on my way out there, and I am coming up the hill from our trailer area, and our broadcast compound is behind the par 3 course. You come through the par 3 course, you come up a hill, and you basically get yourself towards one fairway, which it's the thing people don't understand about Augusta National is how hilly this course is. I mean, if you're walking this, you're putting in a day's work. It is not an easy course to walk. So when you watch the Masters, recognize what these guys are doing. They're walking a lot, and they're walking up and down and up and down and up and down. And I'm pulling this golf cart up, and the sun's starting to set. It's one of those perfect days. You know, when you get to Augusta National, it's, especially coming from Nebraska, it's the first real taste of spring you've had. So you've been in this winter misery for months. Cold, wind chill, ice, snow. And you get to Augusta National, and it's 75 or 80 degrees, and the sun is shining. The azaleas are blooming. The birds are singing. You realize you've made it through winter. You've survived. And I'm driving up towards one fairway, and the hill's going up. The course is quiet. Everybody has left the course. It's just a few people on the course. You can hear a mower in the background, but everybody's left the course for the day. They're getting it ready for the first day of competition. And I parked this golf cart, and I'm the only human being that I can see anywhere within my eyes. I'm it. I'm watching the sun filter through the pines at Augusta National on the first year I'm there, and I'm thinking, there is not one place on God's green earth I'd rather be than this moment, right here, right now, sitting in this golf cart, watching the sun set in the peace of Augusta National after a long, cold winter. The sun, the last few rays just sort of crushing your skin. I cannot tell you how many times I think about that moment. When I think about all of the different things I've gotten to do and all the different places I've gotten to go, and if I could go back to one spot for one moment in my career, that would be the spot. To sit there again and just soak in that place and that spot, it's a moment I will never forget.
Yeah, I got to go. So I went 3 years ago when Sergio won. And I got to go to a Tuesday practice round and a Thursday practice round. And every time I had to step foot off that property we left at the latest you go at 8 o'clock or whatever that last tee time. I mean, I was like taking my 3-year-old son away from the pool. Like, I wanted to throw a temper tantrum. Like, I did not want to go. Like, I did not want to leave just because, like, you don't know if you're ever going to get back. You know, I still sign up for the tickets just put in my entry. Don't know if I'm going to go, but I get goosebumps. Like, I mean, it's just me being the golfer that I am, but it is single-handedly the coolest piece of property to me in the U.S. You can have the Rocky Mountains, you can have the Grand Canyon, you can have whatever, but that piece of property in the middle of what looks like Maple Street in Omaha, Nebraska, it's a thing of beauty. I mean, what Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts were able to envision and what that's turned into, oh man, it is the favorite sporting event. I'll watch. Give me the Masters over the Super Bowl, over the Final Four, over the NBA Finals, over the playoff hockey, over the World Series. I mean, it's like Christmas for me when that second weekend in April rolls around every year.
It is and for me, I'm coming off a Final Four, which is very intense, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot in the broadcast. We're on the air for hours and hours and hours. And I'm not the lead guy on the Masters broadcast. I play the role at Amen Corner. I'll anchor for an hour in the middle of the day, and then all the action's through Amen Corner. So, once that last grouping or one pairing gets through Amen, it's probably, 5:30 Eastern time maybe. So there's still another hour and a half of competition most likely as the golfers make their way through 13, and then they still got 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 to go. So I always have a chain. I'll get an iced tea, cheap, and they're good. And I've got Masters cups from every single year I've been. I mean, it's a unique experience, and it's one that every sports fan should try to do once in their lifetime, if only to be on the course. Because I mean, and it'll be interesting in November because it'll be a completely different feel. You're instead of going out of winter, you're now going into winter. So it's like the last gasps of fall will be the Masters this year. I don't know if it will feel the same. I don't think it will. It doesn't mean it's not going to be great, but it's just not going to feel the same. There's just something about going to Augusta National in April after a long, hard winter, and you feel like it's like exhaling. You walk onto the court and you've been holding your breath and you didn't even know it. And you kind of exhale because you've made it through winter. Spring is here. It's time to play golf, and it's time to you're just enveloped in green and flowers and spring. It's a special place.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what it could be, though. I mean, you're going to have coverage Thursday, Friday, then boom, you have Saturday, Sunday final round with college football, NFL football. I mean, that ultimately could be the single-handed greatest weekend in sports history, in my opinion.
It's going to be fantastic, and it's going to have to be early, too, because we'll have already switched back to standard time by that point. Mm-hmm. So sunset at Augusta National is going to be sometime around 5 o'clock.
Yep.
So you're going to have likely what you had last year. If we all remember last year's Masters Sunday, because the storms were coming in, we had to move everything up early because everybody knew that the storms were going to hit mid-afternoon. So we had a super early tee time. We were all at the course at 6:30 or 7 o'clock that morning because we knew golf was going to get started real early. Our broadcast was on very early. And I think you're going to see something similar for the Saturday and Sunday rounds at Augusta National in November because they're going to have to beat the sunset. And they're going to be if I'm playing in April, you can play. We're on the air usually till 7:30 Eastern time, and you can squeeze out till 8 o'clock most nights. It may be a little darker than you like, but you're going to try to squeeze it out if there's a playoff at 8 till 8 o'clock. You're not going to be able to do that in November. You're going to have to be done by 5 because the sun will be down. So you're going to see that last pairing probably headed off of 1 at about 10 a.m. So that's going to be a real early start for some of those guys.
Real chilly start too, potentially.
No doubt. No
doubt.
So
you were at 8 green. So I got all these other questions now. My golf brain's thinking. So you're at 8. Now you're at Amen corner. So if I recall, is your tower above the tee on 12?
Yes.
Or just off to the left a little bit?
When you're watching from the stands, you'll sit. Yeah. Where all the patrons sit. There's 2 grandstands behind 12 tee. And so we have a booth essentially that's at the top corner of one of the grandstands. And so it's got plexiglass around it. But I mean, if I start screaming, the golfers are going to hear you. You're that close. I mean, it's not, people like to say, I could throw a football to where they are. And people, you got to throw a real good football. You don't really have to throw a good football to throw from the grandstand to get to the 12 tee box. It's not far. So you got to go through a lot of people, but no, we're sitting there. So you've got 11 coming down to your left as you sit atop this grandstand. So you watch the approach into 11, you watch the action on 11 green, you watch 12 all the way through, and then we'll call 13 off the monitor as they come out of Amen corner.
Gotcha.
13, because 13's off to the right, and that's the par 5. You can get them going up to the tee box, but you can't see anything from where you are at 12. So you call 13 off the monitor to get through Amen corner.
Yeah, that's man. Where do you guys get a park at and everything? Because it's not. I mean, what kind of clearance are you guys for the media? Because it's not. I mean, you go through a lot just to get in as a fan, but just the runaround they give you guys there to get security clearance into that place.
Yeah, we treat it very, very gently because it's a special place. You don't want to misuse your privilege to be on that golf course. So we park across the street from the course. It used to be like an old shopping center over there, and they've expanded their parking that way. So we walk in from the back side of the course, behind essentially the par 3. At least now they're building a new broadcast compound, so we will be somewhere else, maybe in November, but certainly I think by next April when we go back for the 2021 Masters. But we usually walk in from behind the course, and go to our broadcast compound. We share the broadcast compound with TV. And so all the TV trucks and all the radio equipment and everything all back in there. And then we will go out from there to the course and then go to our respective locations. And I know sometimes we'll have somebody, when we leave our hole, they'll come and pick us up. But about once every tournament, I will just say I'm walking back to the compound. I'm not in a big rush. I do the post-Masters show every night. But I always figure on a nice day, I'm going to get an iced tea, and I'm just going to walk the course for a while because, I can. And so, yeah, I mean, we have access to go where we need to go, but we don't ever, it's not like I'm walking on the bridge across, amen.
Right.
I don't take advantage of any of that kind of access, and I'm not even sure I have that kind of access. We play it as straight as we can because, you never know. You don't want to lose, the cell phone never leaves my bag. It's in the bag, in the broadcast compound. It never goes out on the course. You can't.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, there is no wiggle room there. You are, if you are spotted with that, you're done. Whether you're a media person or a patron, that's it. And I. There are people who grumble about that. I am not one of them. I think it is one of the most cool things about Augusta National that all of us there are essentially unplugged. And you've been there, so you sit and you watch the manual scoreboard change. And I'm telling you, when you're there for a Sunday round, and last year was amazing with Tiger contending, winning. When you're sitting at Amen Corner, and Tiger's on his way. And everybody's sitting in the stands. They have no idea what's happening the rest of the course. No clue. And if anybody pulled out a phone to look, they're out of there. I mean, they're gone. Yep. So nobody does it because why would you risk that? So you are waiting for the manual scoreboard to move and tell you what's happened with Tiger. And there are moments when, and last year was my first opportunity to be there when Tiger won it. Yeah, that is a different breed of cat, man. Oh. When Tiger wins a Masters, it is a different event than anything I've ever been a part of. I've been there when he's played well and he's contended. I've never been there when he has won it. The roars from people watching a scoreboard change give you goosebumps. Yeah. You're sitting there, and you can kind of hear the conversation, or you can see the body language. And I've got a dad and his son sitting right in front of me in the stands because we're right in the stands. And I've got a dad and a son right in front of me. And their son's elbowing dad. They're changing it. They're waiting, and they're kind of holding their breath. And it pops up that Tiger's gone one more into the red, and people are losing their minds, screaming. Like the golfers on the green have to step back from their putt because people are reacting to a number that was just placed on a scoreboard behind them. It is that was one of the most fun sports events I've ever been a part of. Tiger winning a Masters. And you remember last year on Amen Corner where everything fell apart.
Yeah. Well, the weather cell came through. He had hit and other people waited, right? Because he had kind of walked down there and waited for everyone else to hit. And that's where
he went second. Molinari went into the water.
Yeah.
And then Tiger went and changed his club. Mm-hmm. And instead of aiming for the flag, which was off to the right, he went to the meat of the green to the left, and you got a 5 being posted, and Tiger walks away with a par, and the whole tournament changed. And when that ball trickled into the water, oh my goodness, people lost their mind. And then Tiger plants it right in the green, and you're thinking, here we go. Here we go. Tiger is making his move.
Yeah, there's nothing. I love to play golf, but when Masters is on, I watch it. We were in Arizona last year for my dad's retirement, and we were supposed to go play golf that morning in Arizona. And once we knew the broadcast was moved up, like, nope, we're not playing golf. We're going to watch golf. And we did not miss it. I remember I was sitting poolside with many cocktails in my hand, and I couldn't believe. I didn't ever think you were going to see Tiger Woods win another Masters. I was fortunate enough. I didn't like golf that much growing up, but I got to see him do his greatest things in early 90s, 2000s. But then to get more involved in golf, to see where he's come and to see it happen there, and you get a front row seat, at it, see where it all changed. I mean, that has to be right up there with some of your favorite calls of all time.
Yeah, Molinari going into the water on 12, and the reaction around it was that whole sequence. I mean, I've watched it again and again, and I mean, I loved the chance to call it. I mean, that was I saw it really well too, so I was happy about it. Sometimes you never know. It's a little golf ball, and do you lose it in the trees? Is there a cloud? I saw it really well. I was fortunate, but that was a pivotal moment in Masters history because Molinari was still the guy in charge at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole thing turned. He goes double, Tiger pars, and you're going to 13 where Tiger's got a chance to score. Good luck.
How was handling your emotions? You call football, you call baseball, you call basketball, then you call golf, and at with the Hall of Grounds of Augusta National, how was it handling your emotions? Because like you say, you just come off the Final Four where it's intense, it's back and forth. And now you're kind of calm. It's golf. It's not like you're on TV. You got to kind of portray what you're seeing to the listeners. Handling your emotions and keeping them in check. Calling, in my opinion, the greatest sporting event in the world.
It's a very different call. Obviously, basketball lends itself in a building of 60 to 70,000 fans, which I hope we have again soon. It's a very different call than being at the Masters, where you've got to. It's a range. It's a voice range. It's a whole vocal range that you're working with. That's so different. I mean, you're driving up in basketball to meet the moment and meet the crowd. In golf, you're starting so low and you're driving up immediately, but you're doing it in a way that you have to be cognizant not to decide something by ramping up too soon. I mean, I don't want to. I thank God it's never happened. I cannot imagine the misery you'd feel if a golfer stepped off the tee at 12 because he heard you. I mean, I can't imagine how awful that would be. Thank goodness it's never happened. But even saying it out loud gives me just this gut ache that I can't get rid of right now. It's like, oh my gosh, you've spoken it into reality. Never let this happen, Kevin. Just stop saying these words. But that's the difference with the Final Four. You're losing your mind if you need to. The world of the Masters, it's a different call. It's a different world. It's a different event, but it's the challenge of doing that on the heels of the Final Four is one of the things I love the most about it. It's just such a different thing for me to be a part of.
Yeah. Okay. We could talk Masters all day with you, but I got a couple more questions here I want to get to before we let you go. How much time when you you're preparing for football game, basketball game? I know basketball is so much different because there's so many more games happening during the week, but how much time do you take to prepare for a call once you get your assignment for that game or that week?
It's usually it depends on the sport. Football takes more time to prep because there's more people to prep for. And so my weeks are pretty regimented. Monday afternoons I'll get home from my game, and I usually am kind of just relaxing Monday afternoons. Maybe look back one more time at what we did over the weekend. Then Tuesdays I jump right into college football prep all day Tuesday for college football. Same with Wednesday. We usually have a conference call with coaches. That may be different this year. I'm not sure how we're going to do our coaches meetings in the world of COVID, but I assume it will all be Zoom calls or Skype or something. And then I shift on Wednesday to NFL, do NFL Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening throughout most of the day Thursday. Then I travel Thursday, go to the site, meet with coaches in person. Again, that's the old days. Maybe that won't be the case now, but that's how we've done it before. Meet on Fridays with them, have a production meeting on Fridays for our broadcast, do my broadcast on a Saturday, go to the airport, get on a plane, fly to the NFL city, do the NFL game on Sunday, come home and rinse and repeat the next week. So it's just, it's a pattern that you get into. And once you determine how to do it, it's actually, it's just a matter of being organized with everything you do and prepare, make sure you've got everything you need, make sure you're ready to do the best call you can, and then go on the air and see what happens.
Yeah. What's the most difficult sport for you to call that you have to really get your mind right to make it a good one?
I love baseball, and baseball is probably one that lends itself to the storytelling. So I want to make sure I have more stories, or it's a slower pace, but it's a storytelling sport. So that requires some more in-depth work to be able to tell the story of this guy or that guy. That you can't really tell a long-form story in the middle of a football broadcast, or certainly in the middle of a basketball broadcast, because the action's going back and forth. So baseball is the one that I love doing it, but it does lend itself to, you better have some stories you can tell, because otherwise it can be a little bit boring, I think, for people. The stories are what make the baseball broadcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So got to ask you one quick question before we get to my 3 and out segment. We haven't really talked about Nebraska so far, and this is the 10-year anniversary of Nebraska being in the Big Ten. I would imagine they did not meet your expectations of being in the Big Ten so far, because they definitely haven't met mine. But where do you see Nebraska going forward here in 2020, and kind of how this 10-year anniversary, and you see it, and how they've been, over this 10-year process?
Yeah, I think you're looking at a situation in which Nebraska, I like the fit in the Big Ten. I really do. I think it's good for Nebraska, but I understand why there was a feeling, and people tend to forget, the feeling was Nebraska was going to join this conference and dominate it in several sports. I mean, it was going to be one of those things where Nebraska was right on the cusp of the Big 12, and I think Husker fans thought they were going to come right in and kind of take over the Big Ten conference. Ohio State was floundering a bit. Michigan was trying to find its way, and Nebraska looked primed to come in and really take hold of this league, and they weren't really able to do that. I still think it's a good fit for Nebraska, but it's been not quite, I think, the fit that people thought it would be from a success standpoint when they came in. As far as what they're going to do in 2020, I have no idea. I think this is the most fascinating season to talk about, because nobody knows. I would venture to guess that if you put the head coaches of every Big Ten football team in a room right now and injected them with truth serum, they would tell you they don't have any idea what their teams are going to be like either. Most of them got 2 or 3 practices in the spring before COVID shut everything down. They don't know what their kids have been doing for the most part. They're just getting them back into their buildings right now for voluntary workouts. I am fascinated. The development that had or had not occurred is, there's just, who knows what it is? There's so many unknowns. Anybody that tells you that, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen in this season, has no clue. They're just making it up. They're winging it. I don't know what's going to – I feel like teams that have experience at quarterback should be able to have a leg up on teams that don't. But I kind of feel like that every year. So, this is just – it's a fascinating situation to unfold. Assuming we get started with this season on time that first weekend in September, who knows what these teams are going to look like when they roll out. I think this has the potential to be one of the most interesting seasons of all time.
Yeah. Other than Ohio State and Justin Fields, and maybe, Northwestern gets a QB transfer. Why am I listening to his name? From it's wild. The story is wide open in the Big Ten this year. Other than, in my opinion, Ohio State. I'm just glad we're able to talk about it and start projecting what college football is going to look like this year, because I have no idea what you or I would do without it. Probably pull my hair out many, many times.
I don't even want to think about it. The guy you're thinking of is Peyton Ramsey, the kid who came from Indiana.
Yes, there you go.
To Northwestern, and I do think that makes a big difference for Northwestern. But I'll tell you, I am so interested in this season for a variety of reasons. One, because it gets us all back to work and it gets us back to sports. But two, there's so much unknown with everything going on in college football this year. I can't wait to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. All right, we'll get you out of here on my 3 and out segment.
All right.
So you have one concert to go to, and this band or this singer can be dead or alive. Who are you going to?
Frank Sinatra. Can I bring him back to life for my concert? I'm bringing.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra. One of my biggest regrets is I did not attend his concert at the Nebraska State Fair with my grandparents when they offered me the chance to go. I turned it down because I thought I was too cool, and I had no idea at that time that Frank Sinatra was the coolest human being that's walked the earth. So Frank Sinatra is my answer every single time.
I love it. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Oh boy, it changes by the day. I'm such a Star Wars nerd though that if I didn't throw Star Wars in there, I would probably be. It's been such an impactful series in my life. Favorite stupid movie is The Running Man, which is, I mean, one of the great cinematic triumphs of all time.
Oh, I love it. So let's keep in the movie. If there's a movie about Kevin Kugler, who's playing you?
Oh my gosh, someone who's got very, very, very low standards. I have no idea who would play me in a movie. And talk about a bad movie. Holy cow. Especially these last few months. Look at this guy sitting around his house again. That's what he's doing. Sitting around his house, waiting to feel good about opening up that beer. Is it too early to drink yet? All right, good.
No, let me see here. That was, gosh. Man, you know what? I could see, oh man, what's the guy's character off of Mad Men?
Oh, John Hamm?
Yeah, I can see John Hamm doing Kevin Kugler.
Yeah, see, if Michael were on this call with us, Michael Severe, he would say Steve from Blues Clues because he always said I look like Steve from Blues Clues. So we could just have Steve from Blues Clues show up and star as me.
That's not fair. That's not fair at all. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you taking their time out of your very unbusy schedule right now.
Yes, I don't know how I fit this in.
And again, thank you. And that's another More to It podcast. Thank you to Hail Varsity Magazine. We'll be back next week. Thanks, folks.